70s were busy dialing into tomorrow. Space probes, early computer labs, oil shocks, and city blackouts all fed the imaginations of rock writers.
Oh, you pretty things, don't you know?
Here are 13 songs that heard those rumbles and sang back visions we're still catching up to. Number 1, Starman, David Bowie, 1972.
Sing in the sky, he'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds.
When Bowie walked into Trident on the 4th of February, 1972, he brought a half-finished tune marked Rainbow Song. Engineer Ken Scott let him layer hand claps and Mick Ronson's 12-string sparkle, then faded the mix in so slowly it felt like a lost broadcast tunneling through static. The lyric has an alien DJ cutting into Earth's frequencies, picking up the human race, and coaching listeners to sparkle if they want a seat on the departing craft. That faint otherworld count-in was deliberate. Bowie said he wanted kids fiddling with the dial to wonder if they just caught a real transmission. RCA pressed 5,000 UK promos on the 28th of April. Sales ticked along until the top of the pop slot on the 6th of July. 9 million viewers saw Bowie sling an arm over Ronson's shoulder and heard him promise escape from a doomed planet.
In the sky, he told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile, it's over.
The following Tuesday, shop clerks logged 56,000 special orders, driving the single to number 10 by the 22nd. American FM stations, KHJ Los Angeles, WMMS Cleveland, and WNEW New York filed it under space rock, and although it peaked only at number 65 on the Hot 100, import sales nudged Ziggy past 300,000 U.S. copies in 6 weeks. Fast forward, when NASA's New Horizons probe phoned home from beyond Pluto in 2015, Mission Control cued Starman over the loudspeakers, the alien DJ fantasy briefly colliding with real deep space data.
One so picked on you, ooh, ooh. Hey, that's far out, so you.
Number 2, Brain Salad Surgery, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, 1973.
We made it for our enemy. Brain salad surgery.
Keith Emerson's modular Moog took up half of Olympic Studio 1. On the 12th of July, 1973, he tied its patch cords into a knot of ring modulators and sample and hold wobblers, then asked Greg Lake to sing Pete Sinfield's lyric about cybernetic pleasure units fused into your brain. Engineer Chris Kimsey placed a talkback mic inside the Moog cabinet so the machine's own relay clicks bled into the final mix. Carl Palmer kept the beat in twitchy 7/8 time to mimic a pulse under laboratory lights. The album landed on the 19th of November 1973, hitting number 2 in the UK and number 11 in the US despite no 45.
We got a bottle solid brain with a circuit with a dirty baby game.
Reviewers called the title cut techno horror, but electronics magazines took notes. Popular Electronics reprinted Emerson's patch sheet that spring, calling it Preview of Music You'll Dial Direct to the Nervous System. The song's talk of mechanical brides pops up whenever venture capital decks hype Neuralink headsets. Elon Musk even slipped the title into a 2020 tweet after showing a pig with a brain implant. Meanwhile, college radio DJs still drop the track during late-night tech shows, cueing H.R. Giger's Chrome and Flesh album art on the studio monitor, as if to remind listeners that the push to merge Silicon and Synapse first blared from a stack of Moogs 5 decades ago. And it was loud enough to rattle the coffee in the control room styrofoam cups.
It'll work for you, it works for me.
Number 3, after the gold rush, Neil Young, 1970. Neil Young tracked the song in early March at his Topanga Canyon home studio. Just 8 feet of carpet, a wobbly upright, and a 2-track Ampex he borrowed from Crosby. David Briggs set one Neumann mic for both voice and keys. The creak in the left channel is the sustain pedal grinding against the floor. Young's lyric draws on an abandoned screenplay about ecological collapse. Smog replaces sunshine, wolves roam suburbia, and in the last verse, a Silver Seed starship lifts a handful of passengers off a ruined Earth. No single followed. Reprise figured AM radio wouldn't play a hymn that ends with climate refugees boarding rockets. FM programmers thought otherwise. KSAN San Francisco and WNEW New York made the cut a nightly staple after the gold rush hit stores on the 19th of September 1970, pushing the LP to number 8 in the United States. When Voyager 1 launched 7 years later, a JPL engineer slipped the track onto the pre-flight cassette rotation. Those Silver Seeds felt like mission notes. Young has since updated the line to On the Run in the 21st Century, and environmental groups still borrow the chorus for fundraising videos. Not bad for a basement take held together by one mic, one coffee-tired vocal, and a prophecy that grows truer every wildfire season. Number 4. Oh, You Pretty Things, David Bowie, 1971.
Oh, you pretty things, don't you know?
Bowie hammered out the chords on a battered upright in Haddon Hall while flipping through H.G. Wells' paperbacks. He took the sketch into Trident Studios that spring, asked Rick Wakeman to make it feel like Pocket Gershwin, and tracked the vocal in a single pass. No vocal booth, just Bowie leaning over Wakeman's shoulder. The lyric imagines Homo superior children who read the news, smile politely at their parents, then usher in a post-human era. Peter Noon's cover hit number 12 in Britain first, but Bowie's own version on Hunky Dory landed on the 17th of December 1971 and slowly infiltrated American FM rotations.
You gotta make way for the Homo superior.
WNEW slid it between Yes and Toll sets. College DJs latched onto the line, got to make way for the Homo superior, spinning it before late-night debates on recumbent DNA. 4 decades later, CRISPR headlines read like Chapter 2 of the song. Designer embryos and gene drives replacing the earthly beings Bowie warned were Homo sapiens have outgrown their use. Rick Wakeman still jokes that his £9 session fee bought a front-row seat to Tomorrow, scored by the most polite piano vamp ever to deliver an extinction notice.
What are we coming to? No room for me, no fun for you.
Number 5. Living for the City, Stevie Wonder, 1973.
She hardly gets a pity, living just enough.
Inner Visions was already mixed when Stevie decided it needed one more story. He booked an overnight slot at the record plant New York in late May 1973 and played nearly every part himself. Fender Rhodes, clavinets, Moog bass, and a thumping drum kit he kept so dry the snare sounds like a hand slap on a dashboard. Synth wizards Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff layered Tonto patches for the horn stabs, then rolled a portable Nagra up 7th Avenue to capture sidewalk chatter and a honking checker cab. Stevie stitched that field tape into the bridge, turning a soul groove into a miniature radio drama about a Mississippi kid railroaded by city cops and tossed into a cell he never saw coming.
Clothes are old, but never are they dirty, living just enough.
Inner Visions dropped the 3rd of August. Radio jocks kept lifting the entire 7-minute 22-second album cut because the single edit, released on the 29th of October, trimmed the courtroom screams they couldn't stop talking about. By Christmas, the track sat at number 8 on the Hot 100, number 1 on the R&B chart, and had given Stevie a Grammy for Best Male R&B Vocal. 4 decades later, the song's tour of racist policing and zip code destiny reads like a blueprint for the data maps now plastered across urban studies lectures. Every time a think tank report quotes income gaps by borough, some late-night DJ dusts off this record and lets Stevie's Downtown Sirens explain the stats all over again. Number 6, Have a Cigar, Pink Floyd, 1975.
I've always had a deep respect to the mean that knows.
Wish You Were Here sessions were dragging when the band hit Abbey Road's Studio 3 in late January. Roger Waters had written a sneer at label bigwigs who gushed, "Which one's Pink?" But neither he nor David Gilmour liked the way they sounded on the vocal. Upstairs, folk rocker Roy Harper was working on his own album. Engineer Brian Humphreys fetched him, handed over the lyric sheet, and Harper nailed the take in 3 passes while chain-smoking Gauloises. Gilmour stacked a pair of Les Pauls, one through a cranked hi-watt, the other patched into a Leslie cabinet, and Nick Mason punched the kick so hard it made the overhead mics clip. Mixing ran to July. The final touch was running the whole master through Abbey Road's brand new Aphex Oral Exciter to make Harper's Ride the Gravy Train glint like neon. Columbia pushed a U.S. single on the 4th of November with Welcome to the Machine on the flip. AM stations found the lyric too blunt. It peaked at number 68 on the Hot 100, yet by spring 1976, Wish You Were Here had shipped 2 million American copies. Musicians later joked the track forecast the streaming era, executives still asking which one's Pink, while paying royalties that couldn't buy a cigar, let alone the box. Whenever artists post screenshots of microscopic per-stream payouts, social media replies fill up with Harper's punchline, "We're just knocked out. We heard about the sellout." Number 7, 2112, Rush, 1976. Rush booked Toronto Sound Studios for 3 winter weeks, January 1976, under orders from their label to think shorter. Neil Peart pushed back with a 20-minute suite about an authoritarian future where priests ban music and a lone guitarist rediscovers a lost instrument. Alex Lifeson tracked the overture on his Cherry Sunburst ES-335 straight into a high-watt DR-103. Later sections switched to the white double-neck SG, its 12-string ringing under mountains of plate reverb. Geddy Lee sang most lines standing on a milk crate so his Rickenbacker wouldn't thump the vocal mic, then overdubbed synth swells on a rented ARP Odyssey that barely stayed in tune. Producer Terry Brown spliced temple gong sound effects from the studio stock reel and left the tape clicks audible. Peart said they sounded like computer relays in the priest's temple. Anthem shipped 2112 to Canadian shops on the 1st of April. Mercury followed in the United States 2 weeks later. FM jocks trimmed nothing, cueing Overture, The Temples of Syrinx at 1/4 the hour for maximum driveway moment impact. The album crept to number 61 on Billboard, yet sold a steady 30,000 U.S. copies a month through the bicentennial summer, turning gold by 1977 and rescuing the band from the drop list. These days, Peart's vision of art throttled by central planners reads like a warm-up for algorithmic takedowns and DMCA bots that silence a track mid-stream if it doesn't fit the playlist. Every time a platform mutes a cover song, Rush fans wheel out the chorus, "We have assumed control," like the software itself just donned a priestly robe and smashed another guitar. Number 8, calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, Klaatu, 1976.
To telepath messages through the vast unknown.
Canadian trio Klaatu lifted the title from a 1953 ham radio fanzine that coached listeners on how to hail extraterrestrials. Recording ran August into September at Toronto Sound, the same room Rush had just vacated. John Woolaschuk layered string machines and real violins, then asked engineer Terry Brown, yes, 2 science fiction epics in a row for him, to feed the drums through a phaser so the snare floated like a UFO wobble. D-long whoosh effects came from a Moog patch that found its pitch by accident when bassist Dino Tomic dropped a coffee mug on the keypad. The finished track fades in with a shortwave hiss, a nod to the World Contact Day radio exercises the lyric references. Capitol issued the 6-minute single in Canada on the 28th of October. U.S. promos followed in December, tagged File Prog-pop. FM midnight shows loved the Paranoia. AM found it too long. On Billboard, the record stalled at number 62, but a year later, the Carpenters trimmed it to 4 minutes, adding Karen's choir harmonies, and reached number 32. Proof the melody, at least, was radio grade. Meanwhile, the original version became SETI background music. Technicians at Ohio State's Big Ear Telescope reportedly blasted it through the control room speakers the night after the 1977 WOW signal. When many researchers composed a new Arecibo transmission in 2017, someone slipped Klaatu onto the Office Spotify queue. The playlist log still shows the song title right before the code upload, as if the staff were reminding the cosmos we'd been calling for 40 years and counting. Number 9, The Red Telephone. Love, 1977, reissue spin-up.
I believe in magic.
Arthur Lee recorded the song a decade earlier for Forever Changes, but Elektra's 1977 catalog push gave it a second life on FM just as post-Watergate paranoia and surveillance fears were hitting the mainstream. Lee's lyric, "They're locking them up today, they're throwing away the key, I wonder who it'll be tomorrow, you or me," landed differently 10 years later. What once read as counterculture, angst, suddenly felt like a warning shot. At Sunset Sound back in '67, engineer Bruce Botnick kept the vocal bone dry, so every syllable cut like a mic under a bare bulb. Brian McLean's 12-string shadows an almost churchy harpsichord, while a lone cello saws under the chorus. The arrangement sounds fragile until you realize the singer's pacing a locked ward, unsure who's next. When Elektra repressed the album in spring 1977, college stations in Boston and Madison made The Red Telephone a late-night staple, spinning it next to brand-new Clash imports. Students heard more than just paranoia. They heard predictive dread, no-knock raids, surveillance creep, and the beginning of what we now call the security state. 40 years later, the lyrics light up every time facial recognition hits the news, or another phone app silently maps your movements. Lee didn't mean to predict the future, but the future caught up with him anyway. Number 10, The Robots, Kraftwerk, 1978. Ralph Hutter and Florian Schneider spent most of 1977 soldering custom sequencers in Kling Klang Studio, Dusseldorf, determined to write a pop song from the viewpoint of a factory line. They fed a vocoder through a self-built format filter, giving the opening "We Are the Robots" its metallic slur, then tracked the bass pulse on a hand-patched Moog while a drum computer ticked at an unforgiving 120 BPM. No human swing allowed. In live shows the following year, the band wheeled out 4 fiberglass mannequins in matching red shirts. During the encore, the real members slipped off stage and let the dummies stare, motionless, at the crowd while the synth loop kept grinding. EMI issued the single in Germany on the 15th of May, 1978. Capitol followed in the United States that October with zero promo, figuring English-language rock radio wouldn't touch German lyrics about automation. Instead, New York club DJs grabbed the 12-inch import for its metronomic groove, and by year-end the track was filling post-disco dance floors from Manhattan to San Francisco. The lyrics promise, "We're functioning automatic, and we are dancing mechanic." Hit home harder once 80s headlines filled with plant closures and industrial robots. Today, whenever a think tank report warns a third of jobs are automatable, TV editors cut to B-roll of robot arms and cue Kraftwerk's Piston Steady Hook. A song that never cracked the Hot 100 ended up writing the jingle for the age of pink slip algorithms.
We are the robots. We are the robots.
Number 11, Life During Wartime, Talking Heads, 1979.
The sound of gunfire off in the distance. I'm getting used to it now.
The band cut the track at Chris Blackwell's Compass Point studio in Nassau in July 1979, escaping a sticky New York heat wave for a room wired like a reggae bunker. Jerry Harrison looped a cheap Casio rhythm box, Tina Weymouth chased it with a rubbery precision bass line, and David Byrne rattled off lyric scraps he'd scribbled on the flight down. Transmit the message, burned out switchboard. This ain't no mud club. Producer Brian Eno urged him to chant like breaking news scrolling across a teletype. By the fourth take, Byrne had added, "Send me a postcard, drop me a line," and, almost as an afterthought, "I got some groceries, some peanut butter, to last a couple of days." Survival tips for a city blacked out and bugged.
This ain't no party. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around.
Sire slipped the single to college radio in October. WBC in Boston cued it next to Clash Imports. WLIR Long Island played it at drive time for commuters who recognized the Manhattan street names. At the time, it felt like urban paranoia, but decades later, it plays like prophecy. The song's burner phone mindset and talk of underground networks mirror exactly how protest movements, hackers, and whistleblowers would operate once payphones vanished and every cell tower pinged your location. When the 2003 blackout knocked out power from Detroit to Queens, FM host fielding call-ins noticed listeners quoting Byrne's grocery line like it was line 1 of the disaster checklist. What started as jittery post-punk ended up reading like a manual for surviving the surveillance age. Number 12, London Calling, The Clash, 1979. Strummer and Jones hammering out the riff at a Thameside rehearsal space that flooded whenever the river surged. They cut the master at Wessex Studios in August 1979. Mick Jones, running his battered Les Paul Jr. into a Music Man combo, cranked so high the engineer had to hang blankets over the glass. Joe Strummer's vocal went down in one pass, teeth chattering from a head cold, spitting lines about nuclear error, sun zooming in, and a drowned London where ice age is coming, the wheat is growing thin. The day after the session, a Times headline warned of record summer temperatures and rising river levels. Strummer taped the clipping to his flight case. CBS rushed a December release to beat the Christmas charts, shipping 165,000 Green Label singles the first week. It peaked at number 11 in the UK and scraped the lower end of American rock playlists. Yet within months, Greenpeace fundraisers were using the chorus over slideshow shots of melting ice caps and flooded streets. Every time the Thames barrier closes, London news shows run archival footage of the band on a riverboat. Strummer shouting, "Live by the river," like a dare. In climate science documentaries, the song now sits between time-lapse glacier melts and satellite views of encroaching tides. The punk warning siren that rang before most listeners knew what parts per million even meant. Number 13, Video Killed the Radio Star, The Buggles, 1979. Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs began the demo in a tiny South Wimbledon flat, syncing a mini-moog bass to a ticking Roland CR78 drum box while neighbor complaints thumped through the wall. They moved to SARM East Studios that June, adding Bruce Woolley's 12-string Rickenbacker and stacking more than a dozen vocal harmonies. Horn sang the top line in falsetto, Downs the low, Woolley filled the middle, and engineer Gary Langan bounced them all into one track to make room for a whooshing Fairlight sample marked Jetson Car.
The yellowy eyes, the ice age is coming, the sun's zooming in.
Island released the single in the UK on the 7th of September 1979. John Peel spun it twice that night, calling it catchy like Velcro. It reached number 1 3 weeks later. Island's U.S. office sent promo 45s out with a note, "Radio friends, please don't take the title personally." Program directors added it anyway. peaking at number 40 on Billboard. But the real prediction landed 2 years later when MTV chose the song as the first video ever aired. Midnight on the 1st of August, 1981. Horn's prophecy of screens eclipsing airwaves arrived on schedule, and every time YouTube pushes a thumbnail over your favorite podcast, you're living the chorus he tracked on that mini Moog 4 decades later. Original Island Black Label 45s list running time at 3 minutes 25. DJs who tried quick fading before the synth coda learned callers wanted every last blip of the future. If another 70s track nailed what was coming, drop the title below, and we'll cue it up next round. Until then, spin these again and see how much more of today you can hear hiding in yesterday's noise.